Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, and my very great pleasure to welcome back, it seems ages since we last talked, to Wendy Huston, the CEO of the Kapiti Retirement Trust. Wendy, good morning and welcome to you.
Hello, John, and welcome to you in this new world that we're living in.
You know, I was just trying to work out, it's been a few months since we last talked, Wendy. It seems like a century ago. So much has changed in the very, very recent past, and I imagine it has for you and yours as well at the Retirement Trust.
It's absolutely, you know, when I think back a month ago, life was just as we'd always had it. And here we are down the track. We've had Easter, we're about to have Anzac, and all these things that were just, you know, I guess milestones of the year seem to have passed by in this blur of being in lockdown.
And I imagine that the challenges are very great in the Retirement Trust and other people in the aged care industry.
I think it's been such a challenge because there is no manual for this. It's totally uncharted water, and we're learning as we go. We do one thing and then you actually review it and think actually there's a better way of doing it, or we don't need to do that. And I mean, what I just am blown away with every day, John, is the staff who are working in this area, what good people they are. And, you know, how dedicated they are and how flexible they're being in doing what they need to do. And, you know, we're seeing that we're using our ground staff who are counted as being essential workers, but we've taken a big chunk of both them and our maintenance guys' time to actually operate security on our gates. Because we decided that actually they were the people that knew who was coming in and out, particularly in terms of residents, better than anyone else. And, you know, by having them there, they've been able to control the comings and goings and slow people down coming and going in and finding out why they're coming in. Because we do know that within our community, we have the most vulnerable group of people when it comes to this insidious virus. So, yeah, everyone's just pulling their weight and doing whatever they can do to support keeping our older residents as safe as we can.
Now, you say that you've redeployed some of your people as security at the gates. Was that because of some national directive, or was that a locally taken decision?
No, that was a decision that we made. And so when we moved to level 4, of course, that shut off our hospital and everyone went into lockdown. So, you know, we've got bubbles within bubbles, if you like, and everyone was following that. But, of course, when people who are the most vulnerable suddenly can't get out to get groceries, to get essential services, we went in right at the time that the flu vaccine was meant to be happening. So every part of our operation really just had to stop, and we had to sit and reassess every part of it and look at how we could best support the needs of our residents, because they still need to, those out in the village are living independently, but within a supported environment. So we had to make sure that they were as safe as they could be. And then, of course, those in care here, then that's everything we have to provide for residents there. So we needed to reassess how we did all that as well. So it's as I said, it's been massive. And then you meant to do business as usual, whatever that was. Can't remember now.
Well, you say there's no manual for this, and I'm tempted to ask the question, do you think there should be a manual? Do you think that somewhere in central government there should be some clear guidelines about how aged care facilities should operate in these new days, these new times?
John, we're getting really, really sound, good information coming out from the Ministry of Health and from New Zealand Aged Care Association on a daily basis. And I have to say the quality of that information, the thoroughness of it is magnificent. You couldn't fault it. And you can see that people must be working, you know, all day, every night to try and get out the information. And of course, it's learning for everyone. They're learning as they go. I don't think we could do it better in terms of the information. But as I said, there is no manual because things change. And I look at one thing that we did around the village, and so this is not in the actual aged care part of it, but it's out in the retirement village. We followed the guidelines that we saw local councils were doing with fencing off or putting barriers around all of the seats and the play equipment in public spaces.
Yes.
And so then for our residents walking around the village, we did that. So we have a number of seats all around the village, so we taped all those off, put out the notice with our weekly newsletter. So we're putting weekly newsletters to everyone and said this is why we've done it. We're following that guideline. And then a few people came back and said, oh, look, we can't go walking if we can't sit down because we just can't walk that sort of distance. And so we reassessed it then and thought, why are we doing this? And the advice we've been given from central government is everything we do is to keep pressure off our health system. So you suddenly realise that by taping off the seats, you actually increase the risk of someone having a fall. Yes. Someone having a fall will then need emergency services and could be hospitalised. So we decided that the risk of cross-contamination within our village bubble was probably less, or definitely less, than the risk of someone having a fall. Right. So we flip-flopped on that, and now we've taken down the tape around the seats so that when people going walking, they can safely sit down without fear of falling.
Well, that's very understandable, both the original decision and the rethink. Very understandable and very sensible. And as you say, we're learning as we go along here. You mentioned your staff, your wonderful staff. There have been reports of limited personal protective equipment supplies to aged care facilities. Does that apply to your facilities, Wendy?
We have sufficient personal care equipment to when we need it. It's one of those things, though, John, I think you've got to keep some things in reserve. And we know that at this particular point in time, all of the information that we're getting through on protecting yourself is around hygiene, about good hand washing, about not coming to work or not being in contact with people if you have any symptoms of cold or flu, not coronavirus or COVID-19, but in particular, but just generally unwell. And that's how you keep it safe. If you suddenly have everyone walking around in personal protective equipment, then what does that leave you in, I guess, if you do have an outbreak? Yes. And so, because there are always going to be limited supplies of any type of resource. And so it's the same with hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is fantastic, but washing your hands well for 20 seconds, we know, is a very effective way of dealing with a droplet type virus. And so, as I said, yes, we do have sufficient reserves, and we're doing stock takes on a weekly basis. We're feeding through to Ministry of Health and to the DHB on virtually a 48-hour basis what our reserves are, and the material coming out from them you really can't fault. So I feel quite comfortable with our readiness, but we're now looking ahead, and of course being at level 4, that's quite a comfortable place to be because you've been able to shut off, put things in place. We've had 4 weeks. Going into anything less than level 4 actually doesn't change the vulnerability of our residents, and that's, I guess, what we're trying to get our heads around at the moment. How do we then do what we're asked to do while lowering the level and getting things, if you like, coming into some semblance of normality, our new normal, but still keeping our residents safe when there is not yet a vaccine or a way of dealing with this. So actually, this is just another whole, I guess, wave of where to next, and actually for us that's going to be actually harder.
I think it is. The Prime Minister talks about elimination. If that's achieved, it will be the most monumental achievement, achieved nowhere else in the world. Nowhere else is even close to it, and I think we're closer than anyone else at the moment. However, let's face it, the realistic outcome is likely to be a low level of COVID-19 in the community. If that is the case, doesn't that mean that the way you operate your facilities have changed forever?
Absolutely, yes. And I guess in a positive sense, whatever we are preparing for, okay, at the moment it's COVID-19, but all of what we're doing, none of it is going to be wasted in terms of our infection control processes, in terms of making sure that we care for people in the most respectful way possible. So I guess we can use this as a tool for the future. It's
going to be a challenging time, and we're thinking of you, and pass on our admiration to that wonderful staff you have. You are a very special group of people, and you're literally in the front line at the moment, so we admire you and really appreciate the time you spend with us here on Beach FM. Thank you so much, Wendy Huston.
Thank you, John.
106.3 Beach FM.